All right, welcome back. I'm decided to push the lecture on the French Revolution and Napoleonic era to the final exam. It's kind of a key event, so I want to make sure that it gets its due attention. So it will appear instead of on the second exam, it will appear on the final. Today, I want to use this last lecture before our second exam to talk about events and developments in China, India, and Southwest Asia, getting us up to about the 18th century, the dawn dawn of the 19th century, the 1800s. Um, Beginning with India, we'll take a look at and examine the late Mughal Empire, the cultural growth and enrichment that continued, but also take a look at its leadership, specifically the reign of Aurangzeb, the and this kind of autocratic rule and repressive kind of militancy that many respects brought about the demise of the Mughal influence and allowed a space for British intervention and colonization to take root, and take root rather rapidly. This was best exemplified under the administration and consolidation of power in the hands of Lord Cornwallis, who will take a kind of get a better idea as exactly how that happened. In China, we'll continue to take a look at the cultural and territorial growth under the Qing dynasty, and in essence, its autonomy and how it preserved that, but kind of leaving things at a point where they're on the cusp of actually having much of their authority undermined, which we'll take a look at again in the third module for the final exam. In Southwest Asia, we'll specifically examine the decay, the decline of the Sassafid Empire, as well as the beginnings of the crumbling of the Ottoman Empire as well. For the Sassafid Empire, we're essentially looking at their decline at the hands of the Ottomans and Afghans, basically being sandwiched to the east and west between these more resolute powers. For the Ottoman Empire, they are going to uh, fall to the hands of the mostly European powers, the Habsburgs, the Russians, French, and British specifically. There was also a healthy degree of internal strife that rocked the Ottoman Empire, moving into up and through the 18th century, which will help kind of weaken it from within. So by the 19th and early 20th centuries, really, the Ottoman Empire is what was described as the sick man of Europe. It was a state that was increasingly enfeebled, and wasn't able to essentially, uh, execute its influence, and have its either its subjects or its dominance really felt in foreign affairs really at all. So we'll take a detailed look at how that all played out here. Beginning with India and the late Mughal Empire, we have Jalal-ud-Din Akbar reigning from 1556 to 1605. He's going to be consolidating control over essentially the northern portions of what is today India. His rule was characterized by having lands consolidated in the hands of the emperor, so there's a greater kind of consolidation, collective power in the hands of one, all-powerful ruler, essentially. There was also the institution of what was known as the Mansabdari system. This was a bureaucratic reorganization of the state, where you had a hierarchy established of civil military officials that were going to carry out the day-to-day functions of the state. There was also a revamping of the tax code under this system, and also even kind of a more exact accounting. One of the best examples of this was that all horses in government service were to be branded in order to prevent any type of fraud. So it's very, has a very micro kind of feel to it as far as the affairs of state are concerned. That kind of minutia and attention to that details like that. Akbar's son, Nur-ud-din Jahangir, followed in his father's footsteps to a large degree. He ruled from 1605 to 1627 and reaped the benefits actually of his father's realigning of the administrative order within the Mughal Empire. And this allowed Jahangir to focus his attention on cultural development, which really was the focus of his own interests in many respects. He was successful in maintaining his father's empire, but he passed much of the day-to-day governing and those responsibilities associated with that to his wife. His son, Jahangir's son, Shah Jahan, also continued with cultural pursuits as well. In the early 17th century, basically from about 1632 to 1653, Shah Jahan is going to oversee the construction of the Taj Mahal, which was a tomb for his late wife, one of the seven wonders of the more modern world. There were advancements of English interests during the early part of the 17th century as well. In 1612, the British are going to succeed in defeating the Portuguese and essentially replacing their influence and interaction with the Mughal Empire. There's actually, when this happens, the British are not so successful as building a strong rapport with the Mughal leadership, but it does denote a significant shift in the European presence in the subcontinent. By the mid-17th century, there's again a power structure shift. This is where Aurangzeb is going to come to power. Now, in your textbook, this is spelled with a E. You may see also spellings of his name with an I. So just to know that this is the same person, just spelled differently. He ruled from 1658 to 1707 and brought about more military success for the Mughal Empire, for the imperial throne. Aurangzeb here is going to rebel against Shah Jahan, especially as his health declined. He sees an opportunity, a moment of weakness, and he takes it upon himself to seize the imperial throne by force. As a result of that act, Aurangzeb is going to institute rather repressive means that are going to come to define his approach to authority. In 1669, for example, he's going to prohibit the open expression of the Hindu religion. He's going to order the destruction of Hindu temples. And so as a result of these policies, there's going to be a rather tragic loss of Indian art and culture, cultural treasures that kind of denoted that key aspect of Indian identity. Also, there's going to be a healthy amount of unrest in the empire. As you might expect, the Hindus are not going to take this lightly, so there would be a series of Hindu uprisings. There would be restless incursions and violence on the Afghan border with Afghan tribes. And there were also militant Sikhs that were these religious leaders that were also seeking to kind of protect and defend their own identity and religious freedom. By 1707, Aurangzeb died, and the empire really soon afterward is going to begin to disintegrate rather rapidly. Local leaders are going to quickly fill in the vacuum of power that was left after his death, and so the consolidation of powers into the imperial hands of the reigning imperial figure are quickly swept away. Again, another clear example of that kind of autocratic leadership leading to a built-in sense of fragility and inconsistency when it comes to regime change and the change from one reigning autocratic power to another. States don't do well under these kinds of extremes, typically. In this kind of vacuum of power, England sees its chance to kind of exert itself, inject itself, and take advantage of the domestic turmoil within the Mughal state. As early as 1717, the English East India Company is going to win concessions from the Mughal Empire, from the powers that be, whether they are a weak imperial figure or these local leaders that are beginning to govern in their own interests. They're going to win exemption. The English are going to win exemption from paying any customs duties that might have been in place within the Mughal Empire or the overarching state. And this was actually done via the exchange of gifts and also medical services, the promise of gifts and medical services to the higher ranking echelons of authority in the Mughal state during that time. As England's fortunes are going to rise throughout the 18th century, it is going to increasingly consolidate its control over India. By mid-century, 1757, British officers are going to conspire with Hindu bankers and a gentleman by the name of General Mir Jafar, kind of military power. They are going to create conditions that lead to victory at the Battle of Plassey, which is successful in taking back one of the key urban centers, Calcutta, in the eastern reaches of what is today India, and also helping to subdue the Bengal region of the Indian subcontinent as well. By 1759, the English had become successful and subdued the Dutch, so now they were even fewer rivals to English hegemony in the Indian subcontinent. This is further advanced with the Treaty of Paris in 1763. The same Treaty of Paris of 1763 that brought an end to the 7 Years' War and the French and Indian War, where France lost much of its possessions, colonial possessions in North America. Here, another tenet of that treaty was that France would relinquish its control over its colonial possessions and trading ports within India and the Indian subcontinent again. So it can't really be stressed enough that the Treaty of 1763 here is a windfall for British interests globally. And so, with that aspect, with this kind of caveat for uh, France vacating any of its possessions in India, this meant that the British were now dominant in that subcontinent. They had this massive colonial or near colonial possession um, in the Asian heartland, essentially, and really the dominant geographic center of the Indian Ocean itself, which was so vital to international trade. In the 1770s and 1780s, the British defeated Indian challenges in the First and Second Maratha Wars, and in 1784, British Prime Minister William Pitt enacted what was called the India Act, in which authority was going to, in administering to affairs of state in India, were going to pass from the private sector, as witnessed in the English East India Company, to the British government itself and the monarchy. This is done to essentially check territorial expansion, really to bring it under the interests of the British state rather than the kind of private British commercial interests, which could, if left unchecked, could involve the British state in some, kind of costly wars or ventures that were not necessarily in the state's interest. So in that respect, the India itself becomes an imperial British state-owned possession. It also forbade the East India Company from interfering in the domestic affairs of India. Again, there's kind of this that's going to fall more directly into the British government sphere. And from 1786 to 1793, Lord Cornwallis, soon after his defeat in Yorktown during the American Revolution, the same Lord Cornwallis is going to take control over administering to the affairs of state and British interests in India itself. He becomes the Governor General and Commander in Chief of the region, and he's going to reorganize the administrative offices to reflect kind of the more kind of bureaucratic state organs that would be needed to execute state affairs. In 1793, there is enactment of what's called Cornwallis's Code. This was where you see a judicial system being put in place that was recast on a British model. So it's basically being transplanted to India to more closely reflect British law and justice. And along with this, Indians, the domestic population itself, were excluded from all higher offices and posts within the government, this new governing entity under Lord Cornwallis's authority. By 1796, the end here of the 18th century, England had managed to wrest control of Ceylon from the Dutch. Again, this is just further evidence of the increasing dominance that Britain was beginning to amass for itself around the globe. From here, let's move on to China and the Qing dynasty before we take a quick break here. Early in the Qing dynasty, there were several developments where it was continuing to consolidate control over its region and countryside. From 1644, when it was first established, through 1661, the Shunzi region had to be subdued, and there was a removal essentially of any remaining Ming Dynasty loyalists in that area. From 1645 to 1683, having consolidated power on the continent itself, the Qing sent an armada against pirates that were raiding the coastal regions of China from their bases just offshore in what is today Taiwan. And so the Qing dynasty is going to amass an armada to begin to root out those bases of piracy. From 1673 to 1681, there would be periods of unrest. This is best seen in the rebellion of the three feudatories. These are three governors of southern satrapies or provinces in the south of China that rose up against the Qing authorities. And after 8 years, the Qing rulers did manage to quash these rebels and their allies. So here we see a period of about 40 years early on in the dynasty where the Qing are fighting for their existence. But this is also proved to be a period of cultural growth, which really speaks to the Qing's leadership as far as its ability to, kind of with one hand manage affairs of state and maintaining order, effectively nullifying any challenges to that order, while at the same hand, on the other hand, managing to continue with cultural enrichment. That cultural growth is best seen from about in the latter parts of the 17th century, early 18th century, from about 1661 to 1722, during the Kangxi reign. This is the longest reign in Chinese history, dynastic or imperial history. This offered a prolonged period of stability and continuity, in which the leaders under this reign became patrons of the arts and learning. There was sponsored major scholarly enterprises. The emperor toured his empire on six separate occasions in order to witness conditions firsthand around his empire. So that shows a very high degree of awareness, involvement, and engagement on behalf of the imperial throne and the bureaucracy that could immediately begin to address any problems that were seen. Also, during this reign, the state was initially tolerant of the Jesuits and their presence, the Jesuit missionaries from Europe. The Kangxi was interested in what the Jesuits had to offer as far as technologies that they had, and kind of incorporating those into Chinese society. But really, the missionaries wore out their welcome essentially when the Chinese became wary of their kind of doctrinal squabbles. Again, it should be remembered that the Jesuit missionaries were intent on spreading the Christian faith, and this was not necessarily something that the Qing dynasty was terribly interested in. They wanted the technology, the kind of certain aspects of what the Jesuits had to offer, but not mainly what their main interest was, and that was spiritual expansion. By the close of the 17th century, in 1698, this Kangxi reign had successfully negotiated the Treaty of Nerchinsk with Russia. This marks the first treaty between China and a European power. It was pretty broad in its scope. First and foremost, it was a security agreement that pacified the shared border between the Qing Dynasty state and Russia at the time. It was also a commercial treaty in which Russia established a trading trading house, you might say, in Beijing. And also China managed to win concessions to establish a Russian Orthodox Church in Beijing as well. Moving into the 18th century, from about 1736 to 1796, for much of it essentially, you have the reign of the Qianlong Emperor, which witnessed continued cultural and scholarly growth. There was a population growth as well that took place. There was geopolitical expansion that occurred, and there was also the growth of market economies and urbanization. This is best seen in the conquest of Tibet, which took place in 1751, the invasion and subduing of the state of Burma, what is today Myanmar, from about 1765 to 1769, and also the invasion of what is today Vietnam as well, just before the close of the 18th century in 1793. There was regulation of international commercial contact from about 1757 to 1842, almost a half century, or almost a century. Foreign shipping was restricted to the city of Guangzhou. This is Britain had managed to win concessions to trade in other cities over time, but initially Guangzhou is going to serve as the sole port where international actors are going to conduct business. By 1784, the United States, a very young United States, had won rights to trade in Guangzhou as well. By 1786 and 87, there was a rebellion in Taiwan that was crushed, and in 1792, the Qing Dynasty went on to invade Nepal. So you can see here kind of a pretty aggressive, confident Chinese state that's beginning to define itself, by establishing the borders and extent of its own authority, even extending, kind of expanding that, but also beginning to negotiate independently for and with foreign powers. That's going to change as we move into the 19th century, but we'll take a look at that on the other side of our second exam here. Let me pause here before concluding this lecture with a look at the Sassafid and Ottoman empires, which is what we'll do when we come back in part 2.